don't think you're giving your learners the feedback that they need. Do you? So today what I'm going to talk about is the frequency of feedback in mostly college courses and how that affects the ability of your learners to improve on the tasks that you're trying to teach them. So I'm going to show you two typical courses that I've encountered out there and still encounter, and I'm going to show you where the typical learner encounters feedback in these courses. So, typical university course. At the very beginning they get a whole bunch of info, and then boom, there's a midterm. Then maybe they get a little bit of feedback here. So, feedback right here, and then they get a whole bunch more info, and then they get to the final exam. Guess what? We mark the final exam. At this point, the student doesn't care anymore because the course is done. So basically, the only time they pay attention to feedback is at the midterm. And that's only if any of this feedback is going to improve their chances of getting a better mark at the final exam. Typical e-learning, lots of info, and then we get a quiz. When does the learner get feedback? Right here, the very end. And guess what? They're in the same position that they would be if they were a university student marking their final exam. If they've already failed, the incentive for them to go back and try this again, minimal. Have they completed it? So I'm going to give you some strategies on how to improve that feedback and actually make some of it self-assessment for the learners so they can take care of their own improvements if they like. I anticipate that there probably will be a little bit of resistance to people even eliminating the midterm and the final exam from their courses, and that's because they want the course to stand to a certain standard, and I understand that, but there is ways to incorporate small techniques into the rest of the course where the bulk of the information is being dispensed so that you can improve the quality of the learning that's happening in your classroom. So one of the things I suggest is incorporating some smaller quizzes into your course. So it's not like, you know, this crazy midterm that's 3 hours and then you have a final exam that's another 3 hours. What you can do is actually take some of the questions that you'd have on the midterm and incorporate them into these smaller quizzes. Not only so that students get practice for the midterm, because they should, and they're getting feedback from you on how to improve their process, but also you might be able to take some of that participation and spread it out over the smaller chunks so that when midterms come and some people actually freeze up and lose all their information, that won't be such an impact. Also, another thing that you can incorporate takes a little bit of work up front, but is so effective because then it becomes a self-assessment tool for your learners, is a really well-designed rubric. So let's say they're submitting something and they have a rubric to compare it against. So maybe they get to self-assess to see if against some really good examples where their product, the thing that they've developed, where it actually fits in this rubric. And then they have the opportunity, by seeing some relevant examples, to improve their submission. And like I said, they're doing this on their own. They're doing self-assessment, they're doing the self-reflection, and you don't have to participate, and they're still getting feedback. So one of great tools that's definitely underused. Also, just make sure you bump up the frequency of feedback. We talked about it. In a typical course, the learners basically get feedback twice. Once, really, if you don't count the final exam. Also, the relevance of the feedback. Is it, is it specific? Are you saying, move your left shoulder a little bit so you get that swing really well when you're hitting the golf club? Or are you saying, great job? What does that mean, great job? So be extremely specific. Your feedback should only be contributing to improving the performance of your learners, and it has to be on point. It has to be the kind of advice and help you'd give somebody if you really wanted to change their behavior. Good job and great work mean nothing. Also, timeliness. Like I mentioned before, if you're giving feedback on a midterm and it takes you 2 weeks to mark all the midterms, your students are already in like the 16th chapter of the next part of the course, and the feedback you just gave them, they're probably not even looking at it. So what I suggest is rethinking. If you're not able to give the feedback quickly enough, then rework this some of these pieces so that you're just focusing on the essentials and you're giving feedback on the essentials and you're giving it fast enough for it to actually have impact on future performance. So we all know that in order to improve, you need to get feedback from a mentor or a tutor so they can tell you what's going on while you're learning something and improve those small movements or those skills so that you get better. Let's apply that into our courses. Let's create smaller incremental opportunities for us to give feedback to our learners. It's very timely and very pointed, and also use those opportunities to create those rubrics for them to self-assess so that they become the kinds of learners that are able to reflect on their own performance and see where they can improve it through the kinds of tools that are presented to them. Now don't go anywhere because I just found the cutest kitty video for you to watch. Just kidding. Okay, go to brokencoworker.com. And there what you'll be able to play with is our latest demo, which is a scenario about a bullying coworker. And play with it if you like it, share it with your inappropriate co-working friends, and let us know what you think. Should I say something else? I think I was just supposed to say something else.